One of the biggest struggles when you're a solopreneur is prioritizing and keeping focus. You're wearing all the hats in your company and you're covering all the angles of the business. If you're working from home like I do, home tasks and work tasks can bleed over in each other, and it can get a little chaotic in terms of what actually gets done. How do you stay focused? How do you prioritize what's important when you're wearing all the hats and working all the angles? Of course, there isn't one answer to this because there are a lot of moving parts to it. But there is something that I found can be very helpful, especially for introverted solopreneurs. And that's using a personal energy metric to assign priority to tasks. I'm going to explain to you exactly what a personal energy metric is, why it's important for introverted solopreneurs to have a personal energy metric, and I'll give you the exact formula that I use to calculate mine. Welcome to Productive Introvert Community Podcast. I'm Mariela, and I support introverted solopreneurs in developing healthy habits so that they have the energy to work on their goals without daily routines that feel forced or that only last 2 weeks. Using a personal energy metric to assign priority to tasks is something that I started doing out of frustration, really. When I started my coaching business, I hosted a Facebook group. And a Facebook group is a great way to build a community. And I know lots of people, extroverts and introverts, who do that really well. To me personally, it was incredibly energy draining to the point that I felt a lot of anxiety every time I was going to do a live recording in the group. A lot of introverts get drained by social interactions. This is not true for all introverts, and not all social interactions lead to energy drain. But generally speaking, most introverts do experience energy drain, whether they have social interactions in person or online. It doesn't mean that introverts are not social. In fact, the introverts who I work with in my coaching program are very social and empathetic business owners who really want to help other people. But because their energy can drain quickly, they at some point have lost confidence in themselves to know how to stop energy drain and how to maintain a healthy lifestyle. Unfortunately, I see this happening a lot with introverts when they haven't learned how to manage their energy well. The worst thing is when it comes to a point that they have a million things on their list that they think they should be doing, and they're dragging themselves to work and just hate the direction that their life is going in. What they actually want is to be able to do focused work when it's needed and to be able to disconnect guilt-free when they need to. Learning how to do that is a skill set that anyone can learn. And once you learn it, you can consistently give your best to your clients and your loved ones while also having a healthy lifestyle that's sustainable over time. So where does it go wrong? The key is in how you're managing your energy. I'm going to give you a simple, practical way to track and improve your energy management skills. The core idea is to reframe what we think of as useful metrics in our business. If you own a business, you're probably using metrics to track results in some way. If you're not using metrics right now, don't stress. It's actually very common. A lot of solopreneurs don't use metrics, and I didn't either when I was just starting out. But if you want to create a sustainable business and a sustainable lifestyle around it, using metrics is really going to help you. So even if you're not actively using metrics to track results, you probably are looking at some metrics right now. For example, let's say that you have an Instagram page and you'd like to grow it. You may be looking at how many followers you have. That's a metric, number of followers. If you have a newsletter, you may be looking at the number of subscribers. You may be looking at open rates or click rates on your emails. Those are metrics. And we're used to seeing those types of business metrics, right? That track the results and the progress of your business goals. But it's also easy to get swept up in these types of metrics. I see a lot of entrepreneurs who get so focused on a certain business metric that this metric starts to take over their lives. And they feel that they need to do more and more and more in order to grow that particular metric, like posting more on social, creating more content in order to grow their subscriber or follower rate. And everything starts converging on that one metric, putting a lot of pressure on it and eventually kind of overshadowing all the other things in their business. They start to lose touch with why they started their business in the first place, and it can even lead to burning out on the business. A personal energy metric is one of the things that can help you to understand what to prioritize and how to stay focused by aligning your energy needs with your business activities. Here's the exact formula that I use to calculate my personal energy metric. Joy divided by energy drain. I use a simple 2-point scoring system to score how much joy a certain task brings me and how much that task drains my energy. I score 1 for very little and 2 for a lot. Here are 3 activities that I do regularly around the podcast: preparing for the podcast, recording the podcast, and editing the final audio and video file. I'm going to briefly take you through my personal energy score for these 3 activities. The first one, preparing the podcast. So this has to do with doing research, thinking through concepts, and writing out the script that will help me while I record. I ask myself these 2 questions. How much joy does this activity bring? How much joy does preparing for the podcast bring me? Then I ask myself, how much energy drain do I experience when I prepare? I enjoy that preparation part quite a lot. So how much joy does preparing for the podcast bring me? That one scores high. That's a 2. How much energy drain do I experience? That actually scores low. I feel very little energy drain from preparing the podcast, and I can usually get into a nice flow with it. So that's good. Low energy drain means score of 1. So the overall score for this activity is 2 divided by 1, which is 2, and that's the highest score. So that's good. A second activity that I do around the podcast is recording. So recording is actually making the video. That's this, me sitting here staring at my own face while I imagine that I'm talking to another person. I don't love this part. As someone who really likes to be behind the scenes more than in front of the camera, I do feel a barrier to come on camera. This has gotten easier over time, especially as I've adapted my process to fit more my natural style. But it's not something that I'm super psyched about doing every time. So this one scores a 1 on the joy front, low score. Then how much energy drain do I experience from recording? This is actually high. I experience a lot of energy drain. It varies from day to day, also depending on how well my preparation was done. So preparing can actually help me to feel less energy drain. We can talk about that type of relationship another time, but the energy drain is quite high. I regularly feel like I'm done for the day after recording. I often also plan it as the last thing to do at the day. And sometimes I do experience anxiety of actually pressing play, and that takes up a lot of energy. So that's a 2. The overall score for this activity is 1 divided by 2, which is 0.5, and that's bad. And then the final example, the third activity around podcasting is editing. So after recording, I'll take this video and I'll edit it into a hopefully shorter and more concise version and publish that online. So joy, I don't love it. It's okay, but I probably wouldn't choose to edit if I didn't have this podcast to do, and I definitely wouldn't edit, for other people. It's not something that I generally really enjoy doing. So that scores low, which is a 1 on the joy front. But the energy drain is also low. It doesn't take me a ton of energy to edit, and I can get into a nice flow with it. So that one is also a low score of 1. So the overall score is 1 divided by 1, which is 1. So that's intermediate on joy divided by energy drain. So as you can see, 3 different activities around the same topic in my business, and the scores are very different. Preparing for the podcast has a high score of 2. Recording the video has a low score of 0.5. And editing the video has an intermediate score of 1. So it's kind of across the board, very different in terms of how much joy it brings me and how much energy it costs me. This is just an example to show you how you can quantify what happens to your energy when you're doing a certain activity. And I treat this metric like a business metric. I sit down at least every 6 months. I might actually start doing it quarterly. I make a list of all the different activities that I'm doing regularly for my business. And I use this metric to assess if I'm still managing my energy well in my business. After trying a few different things, I found that the amount of joy and energy I get from the activities that I do on a daily basis is directly proportional to how much positive impact I'm able to have. Your metric might be different. That's why it's a personal energy metric. So you can design it based on your needs and wishes for the work that you're doing. The point is to be aware of where your energy is going and to be able to adjust based on that. So when I first created this metric, it was out of frustration, right? Because hosting the Facebook group at the time was leaving me pretty drained. And I had a hard time justifying to myself whether or not to let it go, because all the people that I was connected with at the time were telling me that it was the best thing to do for my business. But when I sat down and scored each of my activities that I'd been doing for the past 6 months, I could clearly see that the Facebook group was taking so much energy away from other activities that I was doing, and that I was becoming ineffective overall because of this source of energy drain. By creating a scoring system that was more objective and just looking at it from a distance, that's what ultimately helped me to let go of the Facebook group and to not feel guilty about that. And I started a podcast instead. You can see that not every single task related to the podcast has me on a pink cloud. It is still giving me so much more than the Facebook group, while fulfilling the same role is that I can connect with you. To bring this all together, there are a million ways to achieve any goal, right? And you don't have to do something the way someone else does it. You can still achieve the same goal by doing it a different way. In the end, it's about creating sustainable habits so that you can have a thriving business and a healthy lifestyle. A personal energy metric is just one of the things that can help you to achieve that. What's your take on this? Do you track metrics in your business, and have you ever used something like a personal energy metric? Is it something that sounds interesting enough for you to try, or do you think that it wouldn't work for you to have a more healthy lifestyle? If you found this interesting, share this episode with a friend who might find it helpful. You'll not only be helping your friends, but you'll also be supporting this channel, which would mean the world to me, and it would help us to reach more introverts and to help them thrive in their own way. Thank you for hanging out with me today, and let's talk again next week. It is raining really hard right now. I hope you can still hear me. Thank you for listening to the Productive Introvert Community Podcast. If you're an introverted entrepreneur and you're ready to thrive in your own way, then connect with me on thefrankermessage.com/contact.